My name is Caden Ward, Lieutenant, Earth Defense Coalition. Serial number EDC 4912-10A. That designation doesn't mean a damn thing anymore. Not since the sky burned red. I watched Earth die. Not from a battlefield. Not from a bunker or command center. I watched it from the shattered bridge of the Solstice, our last surviving dreadnought. I floated half-conscious, my faceplate cracked, blood pooling in zero-G like tiny red pearls. A great blue sphere turned into a furnace below me. We'd called them the Zalreth. That's not their real name. It's what the linguists pieced together from dying screams and fractured signals when they first came through the worm gate. The name doesn't matter. What matters is what they did. They didn't come with diplomacy. They didn't come with demands. They came with cleansing fire. They opened the sky over Jupiter and poured through like locusts in ultraviolet. Ships the size of continents. Weapons that bled stars. Gravity cannons. Molecular disruptors. Thought-eater drones. Their language wasn't sound, it was radiation. Microwave bursts that melted flesh and bone. The Zalreth didn't see us as a threat. Not at first. They saw us the way a man sees an anthill before stepping on it. We were an infection, they said. A cancer. A heat-blind species breeding in filth, daring to climb beyond its evolutionary leash. We were to be cleansed. Not enslaved. Not conquered. Deleted. Their fleets tore through Neptune's defense ring in minutes. Mars fought harder, 2 weeks of trench warfare on Phobos, orbital skirmishes around Deimos. I lost my brother there. A sniper took him through the visor. I dragged his corpse back to the bunker and held him until the medic bots took him away. They didn't give us medals, just numbers. After Mars fell, Earth went into full lockdown. Space Command issued global evacuation protocols. Most civilians never made it past the stratosphere. That's where the Solstice came in. Our flagship, nuclear spine, 10 railgun towers, 30 squadrons of Tempest fighters. She was beautiful, sleek, angular, bristling with kinetic death. She died screaming. We made our stand in high orbit. 5 dreadnoughts, hundreds of support vessels, swarms of interceptors. We held the line at the Kármán belt for 18 hours, long enough for evacuation shuttles to punch through and scatter toward Luna and Titan. Then came the Godspear, one of the Zalreth's capital ships, a massive obsidian blade with its own event horizon. It fired a single burst through Earth's upper mantle. The core destabilized in seconds. Tsunamis, earthquakes, cities gone in a blink. And then, the light. A light no human should ever see. The kind of light that kills suns. That's what I saw as the Solstice died. I was pinned under a ruptured beam, fire licking through the torn hull. Commander Reyes was screaming in my ear through the comms. Ward, eject, eject. That's an order. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay and die like a soldier. But I had a different death to live. I triggered my escape pod. The chamber sealed. Metal screamed as I jettisoned from the side of the collapsing dreadnought. I spun into space just as the Solstice's reactor detonated. A white nova, then silence. Total silence. I floated in the vacuum. Earth below me, a dying jewel cracked open like a rotten egg. That was 9 days ago. Now, I drift. No fleet. No mission. No Earth. Just me and the void. My escape pod lost power on day 3. The emergency transponder fried. The oxygen filters are running on backup and my food rations ran out yesterday. My body's running on muscle memory and hatred. There's a ragged gash across my side, shrapnel from the bridge explosion. I sealed it with my suit's nanofiber patch kit, but the pain never left. I wear it like a scar on my soul. A reminder. Every time I blink, I see Earth. Every time I sleep, I hear the screams through vacuum I should never have been able to hear. Sometimes I wonder if I'm already dead. Maybe this is what hell looks like. Cold, empty, bright stars mocking me with indifference. I keep a log, not for rescue. I know no one's coming. I do it because if I don't, I'll lose myself. You need a name to hold on to, a voice, even if it's just for the black. This is Caden Ward, EDC, survivor of Earth's last stand. Status, alive. Objective, I pause. What the hell is my objective? Retaliation? Revenge? Does it even matter? Then I hear it. A ping. Small. Faint. Alien. It repeats. A signal. I pull myself up in my seat. Wipe the frost from the inside of the visor. There on the pod's damage display. A contact. Ship class unknown. Range. 14 kilometers and closing. No IFF tag. Not human. Not military. Pirates? Slavers? Salvagers? Doesn't matter. I'm out of options. I trigger the emergency beacon. One last burst of energy from the core. A flare in the dark. Seconds stretch into minutes. The ship draws closer. Then, a docking clamp slams into the pod's hull with a jarring crunch. I feel motion, being reeled in like a fish. My helmet HUD flares red. Atmosphere change. External breach imminent. The pod door rips open. I raise my fist, ready to punch, stab, bite, anything. But the thing that stares in isn't a Zalreth. It's worse. A Talsheri scavenger. 8 feet of sinewy bone wrapped in living armor. Multiple limbs. No eyes. Just a pulsing gland that feels vibrations and emotions. Their kind feeds on fear. This one clicks its mandibles. Survivor. From the burning planet. Its voice is synthetic, filtered through a translator collar. The words are too smooth, too practiced. I answer with a headbutt. The impact rings through my skull, but it stumbles back. I leap forward, wrestling it down in the narrow tunnel. My elbow slams into the gland. It howls in color, a strobing red pulse. I grab its weapon, some kind of arc blade, and plunge it into its chest. The thing convulses. Dead. I crawl into the ship behind it. Lights flicker. Rusted panels. Old Zenthri tech. This isn't a warship. It's a scavenger barge. 3 more of them round the corner. I don't give them a chance. I'm the last human in the system. I will not go quietly. I black out at some point after the fight. Maybe from blood loss. Maybe from the pain in my side reaching critical mass. Doesn't matter. When I wake, I'm in a med bay. Crude. Alien. But functional. My wounds are sealed with a mix of Bacta and spider silk. Someone patch me up. Havoc's voice crackles to life in my helmet. The AI core was partially integrated into my suit systems before the battle. Most of it died with the solstice, but some fragments survived in my Neuralink. Havoc online. The voice murmurs. Tactical systems at 17%. Energy grid critical. Caden, are you still alive? Barely. I croak. My throat feels like someone dragged sandpaper through it. Enemy confirmed. Talsheri crew eliminated. Ship systems accessible. You mean it's mine now? Yes, Commander. I pause at that word. Commander, I was never that high in rank, but maybe now I am. Because there's no one left. The ship's name is painted in cracked glyphs along the side. Vulture's Prize. Not anymore. I rename it right there in the control node. Hell's Echo. Because if they wanted us gone, they should have buried us deeper. I spend the next day scavenging the ship. There's a full weapons locker, barely used, a translator array, an old void mapping core with encrypted NAV data, and the most important piece, a databank of intercepted Zalreth transmissions. It takes me hours to patch the signal into my suit. When I finally crack it, my blood turns to ice. Earth was just the beginning. The Zalreth are cleansing hundreds of other worlds. Any species deemed too chaotic, too unpredictable, too human, and they're broadcasting it like holy scripture. That's when I realized something. They didn't fear our weapons. They feared our spirit, our unpredictability, our anger, our fire, and they tried to erase it. But they missed a spot. Me. This is Caden Ward. I whisper into the calm. Last survivor of Earth. Last echo of soul. You tried to erase humanity. You should have aimed better. I strap in, punch the NAV drive. Coordinates locked. A listening post orbiting a neutron star, home to a forbidden archive of Zalreth war data. It's time to learn what they're afraid of, and then make them regret ever finding us. The Hell's Echo hummed beneath my hands, an alien beast tethered to my will. The stars outside my viewport stretched and warped as I punched the coordinates into the navigation console. A neutron star system, hostile, volatile, and utterly unforgiving. Perfect. I was alone, but not lonely. Not anymore. The vast silence of space was a constant companion, a cold whisper that pushed me forward. Plotting course to Zalreth Archive, I muttered. The voice was rough, cracked from dehydration and sleeplessness, but steady. The neural link in my helmet buzzed softly, Havoc's fractured AI core stirring awake. Distance, 3 light years. Estimated arrival, 37 days. Oxygen reserves at 21%. Hull integrity at 74%. Recommend rationing. Thanks, Havoc, I replied. Keep the optimist act for the long haul. The days dragged on, weighted by the ghosts of Terra. Memories clawed at me with every breath I drew in recycled air. I remember the screams, the desperate cries of my crew as the Godspear slammed into Earth's core, the shriek of metal twisting and breaking, the crushing silence that followed. Sometimes, when the nebula clouds outside the viewport flicker, I swear I can see the ash of my homeworld swirling in the void, a phantom lingering between stars. I wanted to give up, to let myself fade into nothing. But the promise I made on that bridge wouldn't let me. I'll make them pay. That promise became my fuel. The monotony shattered abruptly on day 6. A sensor ping, a tiny blip on the edge of detection, a faint, unfamiliar signal bouncing off a drifting asteroid. I frowned. The archives I sought weren't supposed to have traffic. That sector was supposed to be a ghost graveyard. I took manual control, nudging the ship closer. As I closed in, I saw it, an abandoned freighter, battered and bleeding radiation, wedged between two jagged asteroids like a carcass in a trap. Curiosity stirred despite my better judgment. I initiated a boarding protocol. The airlock hissed open with an ominous groan, and I floated through the narrow passage, helmet lights piercing the thick shadows. Inside, the ship was a mausoleum. Dead bodies drifted in zero-G, bloated and lifeless in their suits. The control deck flickered with intermittent sparks. Systems were dead or dying. But something caught my eye, a flicker of movement in the cargo bay. I drew my rifle, every muscle taut. Slow steps echoed in the metal corridors. "Who's there?" I called out, voice steady. No reply. I edged forward, weapon raised. The cargo bay came into view, a cavernous room filled with crates stamped with alien runes. Between them, a figure slumped, breathing shallow and uneven. I exhaled sharply and approached. It was a human, or something like one. Her face was pale and gaunt, eyes wide with terror and relief. "Thank God," she whispered. I thought I was the last. Her voice cracked like a fragile reed. I lowered my rifle. "Name's Caden," I said. "You?" "Lyra." We floated closer, tethered by the thin thread of survival. Lyra's story spilled out like fractured glass. She was part of a resistance cell, the ghosts of Terra, humans who escaped the initial purge, fleeing underground and into the void. Their mission: gather intelligence, sabotage Zalreth supply lines, and keep hope alive. Her freighter was a smuggling ship, carrying stolen data and weapons. She'd been ambushed, betrayed by one of her own. "Pirates," she said bitterly. "They wanted the cargo, left us to die." I nodded, understanding the brutal law of the void. We had a common goal: survive, fight, retake. Back on the Hell's Echo, Lyra brought news that chilled me. Zalreth control networks are decentralized, but the core archives, they're on a fortress moon orbiting a neutron star, she said. The same place your NAV data points to. A fortress moon, heavy with orbital cannons, drone squadrons, and bioengineered defenders. We were walking into the lion's den, but knowledge was power. I looked at Lyra, her eyes fierce with a fire I hadn't seen in years. "Ready to burn their archives to ash?" I asked. She smirked. "Always." Days passed, and our alliance grew. Lyra's skills complemented mine. Her expertise in stealth, hacking, and guerrilla tactics balanced my brute force approach. The Hell's Echo became more than a vessel. It became our weapon. Together, we pieced together a plan. We'd use the smuggler's agility to slip past patrols. Lyra hacked into the fortress's weak points. I prepped the ship's weapons, retrofitting the railguns for silent strikes. The day we arrived in orbit was gray and cold. The neutron star cast eerie shadows across the fortress moon's spiked surface, a twisted citadel of black metal and pulsating veins of biomatter. Our comms buzzed with tension. "Target locked," Lyra whispered, initiating infiltration protocols. We suited up, silent, deadly. We deployed untethered cables through the moon's outer atmosphere. The fortress was a living nightmare, organic machinery fused with alien tech. Bioluminescent stalks pulsed in the dark. Sentient walls whispered warnings. Every step was a gamble. We breached the inner sanctum, a cathedral of data cores and command nodes. Zalreth sentries, clad in carapace armor and bristling with energy weapons, converged fast. A firefight erupted. I moved like a ghost of war. Each railgun shot precise, each move calculated. Lyra hacked terminals mid-fight, unlocking doors and disabling turrets. Our combined fury overwhelmed the defenders. Finally, we reached the archive chamber. Data crystals floated in suspended animation. I connected Havoc to the core. Accessing forbidden knowledge, the AI crooned. Files downloaded at lightning speed. Names, plans, and horrific genocidal blueprints. The Zalreth didn't just want to conquer. They wanted to erase all life deemed impure. They feared unpredictability. They feared us. A sudden alarm shattered the victory. The fortress shook. Reinforcements were inbound. We had minutes before the moon became a death trap. I rigged explosives, setting a chain reaction to obliterate the archive. "Time to disappear," I growled. We fled through shadowed corridors, pursued by relentless hunters. In the escape pods, I looked back. The archive exploded in a brilliant cascade of fire and light. A small victory in a vast war. Back aboard the Hell's Echo, we were different, stronger, marked by fire and blood. The ghosts of Terra had survived, and they would haunt the Zalreth. Because humanity doesn't just burn out, we blaze. The Hell's Echo drifted through the cold black like a wounded beast, its hull scarred from the recent fight on the fortress moon. Every system screamed for repairs, every gauge a reminder of how close we'd come to death. But the fire inside me burned hotter than any neutron star. I wasn't about to let this be the end. They thought the archive was the prize. They were wrong. It was a lure, a trap. As soon as we destroyed their data core, the Zalreth unleashed their vengeance. Fleets moved like swarms of angry hornets, tracking our signature across the void. The war wasn't going to wait for me to catch my breath. I stared at the worn map of the galaxy projected in the cockpit, dotted with red alerts and enemy patrol routes. Lyra sat beside me, her fingers flying over a handheld console. Multiple hostiles converging on our position, she said without looking up. How long before they catch us? I asked, voice taut. Too soon. She glanced at me. Eyes sharp. No one ever escapes the Zalreth without scars. Some of us carry them outside, others inside. I tapped a sequence on the comms. Havoc. Status report. The AI blinked into life. A ghost in the machine. Hull integrity at 60%. Engines operating at 70%. Life support stable. Incoming vessels. 7 fighters, 2 destroyers, all closing fast. I swallowed hard. We were outgunned and outnumbered. A flash of defiance burned in Lyra's eyes. We don't run, she said. Then we fight. I checked the weapon systems. The rail guns were primed, and the missile bays stocked with a dozen warheads. Prepare for combat, I ordered. The Hell's Echo groaned, power rerouting to shields. The first wave hit without warning. Zalreth fighters tore through the void, their sleek black ships darting like deadly insects. Missiles streaked past our hull. I dodged and weaved, piloting on instinct, the neural link amplifying every twitch. Targeting fighters 1 and 3, Lyra shouted, fingers flying. The railgun spat fire, tearing through armor. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers in the void. Suddenly, a destroyer loomed into view, its heavy cannons bristling. Missiles locked. Havoc warned. I slammed the thrusters, twisting the ship just in time as a salvo of plasma bolts slammed into the hull, sending shudders through the cabin. Lyra gritted her teeth, shields holding at 40%. We can't take another hit like that. The battle intensified. The Zalreth fighters swarmed, relentless and precise. I felt a surge of adrenaline, muscles burning as I pushed the Hell's Echo beyond limits. Deploy countermeasures. I barked. Flare pods ejected, confusing enemy targeting. I lined up a shot and fired a missile salvo. The explosions lit the void in brilliant orange, but it wasn't enough. The destroyers closed in. One slammed a plasma beam directly into our port side. The hull ruptured. Warning lights screamed. I felt a sting in my side as shrapnel peppered the cockpit. Pain shot through me, but I gritted my teeth, ignoring it. Lyra, we need to break orbit, I said, voice strained. She nodded, tapping commands furiously. Engines are overheating. We have maybe 20 seconds before a meltdown. I pushed the thrusters, spiraling out of the moon's gravity well. Enemy fire chased us like death incarnate. Evasive maneuvers, I yelled. The Hell's Echo twisted through debris fields and asteroid belts. Shards of rock and metal whipped past us. I dodged, weaving a deadly dance. Suddenly, alarms blared. Hull breach in Sector 7. Havoc's voice was sharp. I forced myself to stay calm. Seal off Sector 7. Lyra sealed the bulkhead with a hiss. The ship shuddered violently. The plasma reactor was unstable. I glanced at the reactor core readout. It was spiking. We're going to blow if this keeps up, Lyra said, eyes wide. Any ideas? I asked. She bit her lip. There's a salvage depot about 50 clicks from here. It has repair drones. If we can reach it, maybe. I didn't hesitate. Set course. Full impulse. The Hell's Echo limped toward the depot, the enemy still in pursuit. My body throbbed with pain from the shrapnel wound. I pressed a hand to my side. Blood soaked through my jacket. Mech it, I whispered, fumbling for the pouch. I ripped it open, the antiseptic sting sharp on the wound. Lyra glanced at me, concern etched on her face. We'll get you patched properly once we're docked. I nodded, swallowing the pain. The enemy ships intensified their assault as we neared the salvage depot. Incoming fighters from starboard, Lyra shouted. I swung the Hell's Echo around, blasting a fighter before it could lock on. The salvage depot emerged from the asteroid field, a sprawling complex of rusted metal and blinking lights. Docking clamps extended. I maneuvered the ship toward the bay, engine screaming. We touched down with a jarring thud. The airlock hissed open. Drones swarmed the Hell's Echo, immediately setting to work. Lyra grabbed a repair console, hacking into the depot's systems. Drones will stabilize the reactor and patch the hull. Should be done in minutes. I slumped against the wall, exhaustion crashing down. "You're going to make it," she said softly. But then, the depot shook. An explosion rocked the complex. "Zalreth, boarding party," Lyra yelled. The bay door sealed shut. The battle wasn't over. I grabbed my rifle and followed Lyra into the narrow corridors. The enemy swarmed like locusts, their energy weapons blazing. I fired, the rifle cracking through the darkness. Lyra moved like a shadow, disabling sentries with silent strikes. The firefight was brutal. I felt every shot, every hit. One of the Zalreth surged forward, its armor shimmering. I raised my rifle, but it was faster. It slammed me against the wall, crushing the air from my lungs. Pain exploded in my ribs. I struggled, desperate. Then Lyra was there, blade flashing. She cut through the alien like a reaper. I gasped, clutching my side. "We can't hold them here," I said. Lyra shook her head. "We have to buy time for the drones to finish repairs." I nodded, grim. The corridor filled with gunfire and screams. We fought side by side, a storm of violence and defiance. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the drones finished. Hull integrity stable at 90%. Reactor stabilized. The bay doors opened. Reinforcements from the salvage crew arrived. The Zalreth boarding party was pushed back. We were battered, bruised, but alive. Later, back in the cockpit, I sank into the pilot's seat, my body screaming for rest. Lyra handed me a cup of scent-brewed coffee. "To survival," she said, clinking her cup against mine. I smiled, though the pain throbbed beneath my skin. "We're not done yet," I said. Lyra nodded. "No, we're just getting started." I stared out the viewport. The war was far from over, and we were humanity's last line. The war had taken everything. Our home, our hope, and now, the very trust between those who should have been our allies. I sat alone in the dim glow of the salvage depot's command center, nursing a fresh wound on my ribs and the bitterness that had settled deep in my gut. The Hell's Echo had been patched enough to fly, but the cost was steep. The fight back there wasn't just with the Zalreth, it was against Betrayal. When I left Earth's last council chamber 2 days ago, I believed the coalition would stand united. We had to. Humanity's survival depended on it. But politics is a cruel battlefield of its own. The alliance was fracturing. I replayed the heated words from the meeting, the tension still raw. Ambassadors from the various species, humans, Glintari, Valari, and others, sat around the ancient circular table aboard the Odyssey, the coalition's flagship. Their faces were masks of diplomacy, but behind those masks were jagged edges of distrust and desperation. The Glintari ambassador, their iridescent skin flickering under the conference lights, spoke with cold precision. "Our scanners indicate the Zalreth are not acting alone. There is evidence of internal sabotage." A murmur rippled through the room. "Sabotage?" I caught the sharp glance the Valari envoy threw toward me. "We have reason to suspect a faction within humanity itself is leaking intel," the Valari said, voice calm but deadly. My fists clenched. "Me? Leaking?" The accusation stung worse than any wound. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the council chair cut me off. "Enough," she said, a steel edge in her voice. "We have bigger threats than infighting." But the seed of doubt was planted. Outside, the Hell's Echo waited, patched but still limping. The truth was messy. I didn't believe humanity had traitors, not among the few left who'd seen what the Zalreth could do firsthand. But the coalition needed proof, and we needed allies. That meant I had to find answers. I activated the comms. "Havoc, pull up the recent communications logs from the last 3 weeks." The AI flickered to life. Retrieving. I stared at the strings of encrypted data flooding the screen. Someone had accessed classified files, information about troop movements, supply chains, and weapon deployments. I traced the digital fingerprints. They led to a name, someone close. I leaned back, heart pounding. Could I confront them without tearing the fragile alliance apart? Lyra appeared beside me. "Find something?" she asked softly. I hesitated, then nodded. "Someone's been feeding intel to the Zalreth." Her eyes darkened. "Do you know who?" "I'm not sure yet, but whoever it is, they're good. They covered their tracks well. The silence between us was heavy. The lines between friend and foe were blurring. I decided to act. I couldn't wait for the Council's slow diplomacy. I summoned a trusted contact in the Coalition Intelligence Network, a human named Marcus. He was a former Black Ops operative, cynical and ruthless, but loyal to the cause. Marcus agreed to meet on the asteroid outpost Cerberus, a neutral zone where secrets thrived and alliances were forged or broken. The trip was tense. The Hell's Echo moved through the asteroid belt, shadowed by massive tumbling rocks. Marcus greeted me with a grim nod. His cybernetic eye flickering. "Bet your message," he said, voice low. I briefed him quickly, showing the logs. He scrolled through the data, expression unreadable. "This is bad," Marcus said finally. "Who?" I pressed. "Name's not in the official records, but I know who they are." The traitor was someone I knew well, someone I trusted. I swallowed hard. "I need proof," I said. Marcus nodded. "I have a plan, but it's risky." The plan was simple: infiltrate a Zalreth forward base on the edges of Coalition space. They had a hidden comm relay there, where stolen intel was transmitted. If we could capture it, we could trace the leak. Lyra volunteered to join the mission. We assembled a small strike team. The tension in the air was thick, like the calm before a storm. The journey to the forward base was perilous. We slipped through asteroid fields and nebulae, cloaked in silence. Every sensor ping felt like a heartbeat in the void. When we arrived, the base was carved into a jagged asteroid, lit by flickering red lights. I led the team inside, rifle ready. The corridors were dark and silent. Suddenly, alarms blared. We'd been detected. The fight was brutal. Zalreth warriors emerged from the shadows, their plasma blades humming. Lyra moved with deadly grace, cutting down foes before they could react. I fired my rifle, every shot precise and deadly. The team pushed deeper. Finally, we reached the comm relay. Marcus hacked the system, sweat beading on his brow. Data streamed onto our tablets. And then we found it, the leak. The name shocked me. The traitor was Commander Eli Voss. Commander Voss, my mentor, my friend. The man who had saved my life during the first Zalreth invasion. I staggered back, disbelief and betrayal crashing over me. "Why?" Marcus looked at me, expression hard. "He's been playing both sides, feeding intel to the Zalreth in exchange for power." I clenched my fists, fury boiling inside. This was more than treason. This was a death sentence for the Coalition. "We have to stop him," I said, voice low but resolute. Marcus nodded. "We will. But first, we need to get this data back to the Council. They need to see the truth." The return trip was tense. I couldn't shake the feeling that the war wasn't just out there in the stars. It was inside us. Back at the Council chamber, the atmosphere was even colder. The room filled with stern faces as I presented the evidence. Gasps echoed around the table. The Glenhari ambassador's eyes narrowed. The Valari envoy said nothing. Commander Voss was summoned. He stood before the Council, calm and collected. "You have no proof," he said, voice icy. But the data spoke louder. Voss's facade cracked. "I did what was necessary to protect humanity," he said. His words were poison. The Council voted. Voss was stripped of his command and placed under arrest. But the damage was done. The alliance was fractured. I looked around the chamber, seeing the doubt and fear in their eyes. "Trust is fragile," I said, voice steady. "But if we don't hold together, we will fall apart." Lyra squeezed my shoulder. "We fight on," she said. I nodded. The war had broken our alliances, but not our spirit. And as I stepped out of the chamber, I knew one thing for certain. The battle for humanity's survival was only just beginning. The corridors of the Coalition ship were eerily silent, save for the soft hum of machinery and the faint echoes of my footsteps. The weight of what I'd uncovered in the last days sat heavy on my shoulders. Commander Eli Voss's betrayal was a wound that cut deeper than any enemy's blade. It shook the very foundation of the alliance we had built so desperately to survive. But there was no time to dwell on that. The leak had slowed the Coalition's operations, and the Zalreth were adapting faster than ever. The war wasn't just about firepower anymore. It was about information, and I had to find out how deep the poison ran. The briefing. Lyra was already waiting in the command center when I arrived. Her eyes, always sharp, burst into me. "We can't afford to waste time," she said. "The Coalition's next offensive depends on us finding the source of the sabotage." Marcus was there too, fingers drumming on the metal console. "We've identified several high-value targets who could be involved in the leak," he said, bringing up a holographic map of coalition-controlled systems. Red markers dotted several planets and stations, each a potential nest of betrayal. I nodded. We moved fast and clean. No mistakes. The truth was, every fiber of me wanted justice and revenge. But we couldn't let anger blind us. The stakes were too high. Preparing the team. Our strike team was a mix of specialists, human and alien, each chosen for their skills, not their politics. Lyra was our sharpshooter, silent and deadly with her plasma rifle. Marcus handled intelligence and sabotage. His cybernetic enhancements gave him an edge in infiltration. Tarek, a Volari pilot, could maneuver a fighter through the tightest asteroid fields. And then there was me, the point man, the one who would lead the charge into the heart of enemy territory. I checked my gear meticulously. The rifle was calibrated, the armor patched up, and the comms secure. I glanced at the others. This isn't just a mission, I said. It's a message to anyone thinking about betraying us. We will find you. Lyra smirked, loading her rifle. Let's burn some traitors. First target, Outpost Zenith. Our first lead took us to Outpost Zenith, a remote research station on the edge of Coalition space. The intel suggested it was a relay point for stolen data, possibly a hub for the traitors' network. The Hell's Echo slipped through the void, cloaked in shadow, approaching the outpost with care. Outpost Zenith was a stark contrast to the sleek Coalition ships, an old mining station retrofitted for research, its surface scarred and weathered by years of asteroid impacts. The silence was oppressive as we docked. I led the team inside, every sense on high alert. The station was deserted, too quiet. Then the alarms blared. Ambush. Zalreth warriors swarmed from the shadows, plasma blades crackling with deadly energy. We fought hard, the echo of gunfire and the hiss of energy blades filling the corridors. Lyra picked off enemies with precision, each shot a whisper of death. Marcus hacked into the station's security system, sealing off corridors to contain the battle. I moved forward, my rifle blazing, every shot a desperate attempt to buy time. The fight was brutal, and the enemy relentless. Then we found it, a hidden data vault beneath the station. Marcus went to work, fingers flying over his console. The vault's encryption was advanced, but Marcus was relentless. Minutes later, the data streamed onto our devices. The revelation. Among the intercepted transmissions were encrypted messages linking a shadowy figure to multiple Coalition insiders. The messages spoke of credits, weapons shipments, and strategic secrets, all flowing to the Zalreth. But one name stood out, Lieutenant Kira Solis. Kira was a decorated officer, known for bravery and tactical genius. I couldn't believe it. The sting operation. We couldn't confront Kira blindly. If she was the traitor, she was dangerous. Marcus devised a plan to lure her out. We sent false intelligence through secure channels, hinting at a secret weapons cache ripe for the taking. Within hours, the trap was set. We tracked Kira to a deserted spaceport on the mining moon, Gaines 4. The Hell's Echo hovered low, cloaked in darkness. Gaines 4. The trap. The spaceport was a sprawling tangle of metal and dust, shadows stretching long under twin suns. I led the team on foot, moving silently between crates and rusted vehicles. Kira was waiting. Her eyes locked onto me the moment we stepped into the open. She didn't hesitate. Her plasma pistol sang as she fired. I dove behind cover, returning fire. The firefight was intense and personal. Kira was no ordinary soldier. She was a ghost, weaving through cover, precise and deadly. Face to face. I found myself face to face with her in a narrow alley, breath ragged, heart pounding. Kira, I said, voice steady despite the chaos. Why? Her eyes flickered with pain and anger. I'm protecting humanity, she said, voice hard. But sometimes, you have to get your hands dirty. I shook my head. You betrayed us. We're supposed to be fighting together. She sneered. Together? Look around. The Coalition is a sinking ship. I'm making sure my people survive. The words hit me like a punch. Capture and consequences. We subdued Kira with a stun device. Back on the Hell's Echo, the silence was heavy. She refused to speak. But Marcus had already uncovered enough from her comms. A network of disaffected officers and rogue factions willing to sell secrets. New enemy, new stakes. The war had just gotten more complicated. We weren't just fighting an alien threat. We were fighting the fractures within. Lyra looked at me, her expression grim. Trust is a fragile thing. she said. I nodded. But it's all we have left. The Hell's Echo jumped to hyperspace, carrying us toward the next target. The hunt had begun. The silence on the Hell's Echo was different now, heavier, like a storm pressing down before it breaks. We were deeper into Coalition space, farther from familiar stars and the warm certainty of alliance. Yet, the cold grip of doubt had wormed its way into the ship's hull and settled in our hearts. The capture of Lieutenant Kira Solis had cracked open a hidden wound. It wasn't just a wound, it was a festering infection. Her betrayal was not an isolated rot, but a symptom of something far worse lurking beneath the Coalition's surface. The weight of betrayal. I stood by the viewport, watching stars blur into lines as the ship sped through hyperspace. I wasn't alone. Lyra was beside me, silent, her gaze distant but fierce. How many more, you think? She asked quietly. I shook my head. I don't know. But this isn't just about a few bad apples. The Coalition's foundations are cracking. Lyra's eyes hardened. And we're the ones supposed to hold it together. Her voice carried a weight that settled in my chest like cold iron. Interrogation. The interrogation room was sterile and cold. Kira sat restrained, her posture rigid but defiant. Marcus and I took turns questioning her. Why betray the Coalition? Marcus demanded. Kira's laugh was bitter. The Coalition abandoned humanity the moment it suited them. We're pawns in a game of politics and power. Her words stung. But there was something deeper, something personal fueling her fury. I leaned in. Who are you working for? Who else is involved? She narrowed her eyes. You want names? You'll get nothing. It was clear she wasn't just a traitor. She was a soldier broken by her own ideals. The hidden network. Meanwhile, Marcus worked tirelessly in the comms bay, hacking into Coalition databases, tracking digital breadcrumbs left by Kira's communications. The results were grim. There was a shadow network embedded deep within the Coalition, officers, technicians, and politicians selling secrets to the Zalreth, driven by fear, greed, or disillusionment. We traced several operatives scattered across different systems, each with their own reasons but united by one goal: the downfall of the Coalition. It wasn't just a war against an alien enemy anymore. It was a war within, division among us. The tension on the ship was palpable. Rumors spread like wildfire, suspicions flared. I caught myself glancing at the crew differently. Was that a flicker of hesitation in Tarek's eyes? Was Marcus really as loyal as he claimed? The most dangerous enemy was not always the one with claws and fangs. Unlikely ally. One evening, I was pulled into the med bay. Tarek was there, his expression guarded. We need to talk, he said. He confided that he had suspicions about a faction within the Coalition, a secret cabal pulling strings from the shadows, orchestrating betrayals for their own ends. He spoke of old grudges, political power plays, and a looming coup that threatened to tear the Coalition apart from the inside. Planning the next move. The ship's briefing room was tense as we gathered to plan our next steps. We can't just hunt traitors one by one, Lyra said. We need to cut off the head of the serpent. Marcus projected a holographic map, highlighting systems and key figures linked to the Shadow Cabal. Our next target, Marcus said, is the planet Varela Prime. It's the Cabal's base of operations. I felt the weight of the mission settle on me. Varela Prime was heavily fortified, a political and military stronghold. An assault would be suicide without inside help. Infiltration. We decided on a covert approach. Lyra, Marcus, Tarek, and I would infiltrate Varela Prime under the guise of Coalition diplomats. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure would mean not only death, but the collapse of any hope left for the Coalition. The ship dropped out of hyperspace just beyond Varela Prime's atmosphere. The City of Masks. Varela Prime was a labyrinth of gleaming spires and shadowed alleys, a city where power hid behind 1,000 masks. We moved through the bustling capital, blending with diplomats, soldiers, and merchants. Every glance, every word was a calculated risk. Uncovering the Cabal. Our investigations led us to the Council Hall, where the Cabal held secret meetings. Using forged credentials, we managed to access the building. Inside, we discovered chilling plans, strategies to destabilize the Coalition from within, assassinations, and sabotage timed to coincide with major military offensives. The betrayal was systemic, and the Cabal's reach extended far beyond what we imagined. Betrayal strikes again. As we prepared to leave with the evidence, alarms blared. We had been discovered. Gunfire erupted in the marble halls as guards swarmed. We fought our way out, each step a desperate dance with death. The escape. The chase led us through winding corridors and down fire escapes. Tarek's piloting skills were pushed to the limit as we raced to the extraction point. The Hell's Echo waited, cloaked and ready. As we boarded, I looked back at Varela Prime, the shining jewel turned poison. Aftermath and resolve. Back on the ship, we reviewed the stolen data. The depth of corruption was staggering, but now we had proof. We had to expose the Cabal before they destroyed everything. Lyra broke the silence. This war, it's not just against the Zalreth anymore. I nodded. It's a war for the soul of humanity, and I was ready to fight it, no matter the cost. The weight of betrayal and conspiracy was crushing, but we were far from defeated. In fact, I felt the spark of a fire inside me, raw and untamable. The revelations from Varela Prime had changed everything. The enemy was no longer just the Zalreth horde outside coalition borders, but the insidious rot eating away at the heart of humanity's last alliance. We had to act, and fast, rallying the crew. The Hell's Echo was tense. People whispered in corners, eyes darting, fingers twitching near weapons holsters. Trust was a fragile currency, spent too freely and lost too easily. I called a meeting in the command center. Standing in front of the holographic map, I faced my crew, Lyra, Marcus, Tarek, and the others. Each of them carried their own scars from the past weeks, but I saw determination, too. This isn't just our fight, I said, voice steady, carrying over the quiet murmur. It's a war for the very soul of humanity. The Cabal on Varela Prime, those traitors, are just the beginning. We've got more enemies within than we do without. Lyra's sharp eyes met mine. We need allies, she said. If the coalition fractures completely, we lose everything. A risky alliance. Our next move was clear, but it came with a price. We had to reach out to a faction outside the coalition's official ranks, the Outlanders. The Outlanders were a mix of exiles, smugglers, and warriors from forgotten systems, branded as outlaws by the coalition, but fiercely independent and skilled in guerrilla warfare. The decision wasn't popular. Trusting former enemies was dangerous, but we had little choice. The meeting point. We arranged to meet the Outlander leaders at the neutral station, Nova Haven, a battered relic floating at the edge of unclaimed space. The station was a sprawling maze of docking bays, bazaars, and shadowed taverns, alive with tension and trade. As we docked, I felt the familiar hum of danger mingled with opportunity. First contact. The Outlander leaders were a stark contrast to our coalition officers. Ragged, fierce, and with eyes that had seen too much, they greeted us with suspicion. Jax, their leader, stepped forward, a tall man with cybernetic arms and a scar slicing through his left cheek. "You're the one stirring up trouble," he said, voice rough but measured. "We're here because we need your help," I said bluntly. Jax raised an eyebrow. "Help? Why should we trust the coalition?" I met his gaze. "Because if the coalition falls, the Zalreth will consume everything, including your territory." Negotiation. The negotiations were tense. Jax and his lieutenants pressed us hard, demanding guarantees, weapons, and freedom from coalition law. Lyra handled the tactical talks, Marcus the technical details. I focused on the bigger picture, the fragile thread of trust we had to weave. After hours of tense dialogue, we struck a deal, a limited alliance to strike at the Cabal and disrupt Zalreth operations. Training and preparation. Back on the Hell's Echo, the crew worked tirelessly alongside the Outlander warriors. We shared tactics, weapons, and intelligence. The Outlanders taught us guerrilla strategies and hit-and-run tactics, skills the coalition sorely lacked. The plan. Our target was a communications hub on the Moon Tyrant's Reach, a critical node for both coalition and Zalreth operations. Destroying it would cripple the Cabal's ability to coordinate attacks and buy us time. The operation required precision, stealth, and firepower. Infiltration. The approach was tense. Lyra piloted our drop pod through a gauntlet of defenses. We landed silently under the moon's shadow. Ambush. The ground was barren and jagged. As we moved towards the hub, Zalreth patrols appeared, twisted, insectoid warriors with razor-sharp claws. Gunfire erupted. We fought fiercely, each of us a blur of motion and controlled fury. The hub. The communications hub was a fortress, reinforced with energy shields and automated turrets. Marcus and the Outlanders worked to disable the shields while Lyra and I covered them. The tension was unbearable. Every second could be our last. Explosion and escape. With a thunderous roar, The hub exploded in a fireball that lit the night sky. The ground shook beneath us. We raced back to the drop pod. Zalreth reinforcements closing in. Tarek's piloting saved us, expertly navigating the pod through enemy fire and asteroid debris. Aftermath. Back on the Hell's Echo, the victory was bittersweet. The destruction had sent a message, but the cost was high. Lyra treated wounds with practiced hands. Marcus scoured intercepted comms for clues to the Cabal's next move. New resolve. I stood again by the viewport, staring into the vastness of space. The coalition was fracturing, the enemy was at the gates, and the war was far from over. But we had struck a blow. And now, more than ever, humanity's survival depended on the strength of its shadows. The victory at Tyron's Reach had ignited a spark, a small but fierce blaze against the shadowed forces undermining the coalition. Yet, as we celebrated the destruction of the communication hub, I knew the war was far from over. We had only scratched the surface of a tangled conspiracy that stretched like a cancer into the very core of human governance. And now, we were about to descend deeper into that darkness. The new mission. The briefing room on the Hell's Echo was cold and humming with low conversations. The holographic map hovered between us, highlighting a cluster of systems deep within coalition territory, systems rumored to be under direct control of the Cabal. Lyra pointed at the most prominent target, a massive orbital station named Citadel V, orbiting a dead world at the fringe of coalition space. Citadel V is the Cabal's nerve center, she explained, her voice steady but heavy. It's where they coordinate their operations, bribe officials, and plan the next wave of chaos. Marcus tapped the controls, zooming in on the station. It's heavily fortified, shielded, and guarded by elite troops, he warned. I swallowed hard. We weren't just going to strike from the shadows this time. We were going to storm the heart of darkness itself. The stakes. Citadel V wasn't just a military stronghold. It was a symbol of everything we were fighting against: corruption, betrayal, and the slow unraveling of humanity's unity. If we failed, the coalition's last hope would crumble. If we succeeded, we might finally expose the Cabal to the entire galaxy and turn the tide. The stakes had never been higher. Preparing for infiltration, we spent hours planning. Lyra and Marcus worked side by side on the technical aspects, mapping out security protocols and defense systems. Tarek and I coordinated with the Outlanders, preparing our squad for the brutal urban combat that awaited inside the station. As we geared up, the ship hummed with tense anticipation. Every weapon was checked, every strategy rehearsed. Arrival at Citadel V. Dropping out of hyperspace near the station, the Hell's Echo slipped into the station's shadow, cloaked in stealth tech. The orbital station loomed massive and imposing, its dark metal surface scarred from years of conflict. Lyra piloted the drop shuttle with precision, navigating a narrow, debris-filled corridor to reach a maintenance hatch on the station's lower deck. The hatch hissed open, and we slipped inside. Inside the Citadel, the air inside was recycled and stale. The corridors twisted and turned, bathed in harsh fluorescent light. The silence was eerie, broken only by the distant hum of machinery and the occasional crackle of a comm channel. Our team moved like ghosts, weapons drawn and senses alert. The first encounter. We had barely moved 100 meters when the first patrol appeared. 2 guards, heavily armed and alert, rounded the corner. Contact, Lyra hissed. The firefight was brutal and fast. Bullets ricocheted off metal walls, and the air filled with the acrid smell of burning circuitry. We moved in perfect sync, taking down the guards before they could raise the alarm. Deeper into the abyss. As we pressed forward, the station's true nature revealed itself. Rooms filled with stacks of encrypted data cores, banks of servers humming with illicit information, cells housing prisoners, some coalition soldiers, others civilians captured to silence dissent. The deeper we went, the clearer it became. This station was the epicenter of a vast, ruthless conspiracy. A shocking discovery. In the intelligence hub, Marcus hacked into the mainframe. The screens lit up with files revealing the Cabal's darkest secrets, plans for assassinations, orchestrated uprisings, and the systematic elimination of anyone loyal to the true coalition ideals. But what hit me hardest was the list of names, many familiar faces, respected leaders we had trusted. The Cabal had infiltrated every level of power. The cost of truth. Suddenly, Alarms blared. We'd triggered the station's defenses. The battle within. The corridors erupted in chaos. Elite Cabal guards poured in, their armor sleek and deadly. We fought desperately, covering each other as we pushed toward the central command. Tarek's voice crackled over comms. Extraction compromised. We need a new plan. The escape plan. Marcus pulled up the schematics, a service tunnel leading to the outer ring. We fought through waves of enemies, every step a battle. The tunnel was narrow, claustrophobic, perfect for an ambush. I led the way, gun ready, heart pounding. The final stand. We reached the outer ring just as reinforcements closed in. Cornered and outnumbered, we made our last stand. Each shot, each breath was a defiance against the darkness. Rescue and reflection. Tarek's shuttle arrived just in time, swooping low and scattering enemies. We barely made it aboard, battered but alive. As the Hell's Echo jumped back to hyperspace, I looked around at my crew, bruised, tired, but unbroken. We had glimpsed the heart of darkness and survived. A new hope. Back in the command center, the data we retrieved was analyzed. The Cabal's influence was staggering, but now we had proof. We would expose them and rally the galaxy to fight back. Final thoughts. Standing at the viewport, watching the stars streak by, I felt something shift inside me. The war was far from over, but humanity had a fire they couldn't snuff out. And as long as we stood together, shadows and all, there was hope. The battle at Citadel V had rattled us more than I expected. We had scraped together a victory by the skin of our teeth, but the cost was visible in every line of exhaustion on my crew's faces. The data we seized exposed the Cabal's rot deeper than anyone had imagined, and the Coalition's political foundation teetered on the brink of collapse. The next phase of our fight wasn't just about striking back. It was about rising from the ashes, because only by embracing the broken pieces of humanity could we forge a new path forward. This was the rise of the fallen, the fallout. The aftermath of the Citadel V assault was immediate and brutal. News spread like wildfire across Coalition worlds, whispers and rumors exploding into full-blown accusations. The Cabal's puppets and government scrambled to spin the narrative, branding us terrorists and traitors. But the truth was out. Leaders we once trusted were now exposed as liars, manipulators, and conspirators. The Coalition in turmoil. The Coalition fractured. Some worlds called for peace and reform. Others called for total war, to purge the corruption by any means necessary. The Cabal's hold on power slipped, but they weren't done fighting. They unleashed their secret enforcers, elite assassins and mercenaries known only as the Fallen. The Fallen. I first heard their name whispered in the shadows. They're ghosts, said Lyra. Former Coalition soldiers turned killers, stripped of rank and honor, now mercilessly hunting down anyone who threatens the Cabal. The Fallen were brutal and efficient, striking with surgical precision. Rumors swirled that their leader was once a decorated war hero who had fallen from grace, a man named Darius Call. Darius Call, the ghost of war. I remembered the name from my days in training. Darius was once a legend, a tactician and soldier who could outthink any enemy. But something broke him, some dark secret buried beneath medals and battlefield glory. Now, he was the Cabal's most feared weapon, an unseen enemy. We had to face the Fallen, but they didn't just hunt us on the battlefield. They hunted us in our minds. Every mission, every ally, every shadow seemed to carry the threat of betrayal. Trust was a luxury we could no longer afford. Ambush on Alara. Our first encounter came on the mining colony of Alara, a remote asteroid belt rich in rare metals. The Coalition was sending peace envoys to rally the miners, a critical resource for the war effort. We were tasked with escorting the convoy. The attack. The convoy was ambushed minutes after landing. Explosions ripped through the docking bay. The Fallen struck like phantoms, swift, deadly, and unseen until it was too late. The battle. I found myself face to face with one of the Fallen, a cold-eyed woman with a cybernetic arm and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She moved with deadly grace, her rifle spitting fire. We danced a deadly ballet, bullets and blades flashing in the dim light. Team effort. Lyra and Marcus flanked me, covering my six as I fought to hold the line. Tarek coordinated reinforcements and medical teams. The turning tide. The battle was brutal and chaotic. We lost good people that day, but we also sent a message. The Fallen might be ghosts, but they were not invincible. Shattered trust. After the fight, we regrouped on the Hell's Echo. The attack had been too coordinated, Someone had to have tipped off the fallen. I stared at my crew, searching for answers, for signs of betrayal, but no one gave anything away. A silent betrayal. Then, late one night, I found evidence hidden in the ship's logs, a coded transmission sent without authorization. Someone on the ship had been feeding information to the Cabal. Confrontation. I gathered the crew. Faces hardened, eyes wide with shock and anger. I revealed the evidence. The traitor. The traitor was Lyra. She broke down under the weight of it all, confessing the Cabal had threatened her family. Mercy and resolve. We didn't turn her away. Instead, we vowed to protect her and use the betrayal to our advantage. Lyra became our inside source, a dangerous double agent walking a razor's edge, preparing for the next battle. With new intel from Lyra, we began planning a bold strike against the Cabal's primary resource, the asteroid fortress of Obsidian Reach. The turning point. This mission could break the Cabal's power or end us all, but it was a risk we had to take. Final reflections. As I stood on the bridge of the Hell's Echo, staring into the void, I knew one thing. The Fallen had risen from the ashes of a broken coalition, but so had we. And humanity's greatest strength wasn't perfection, but the courage to rise again when everything falls apart. The war had been long, brutal, and relentless. Every step we'd taken from the shadows of Tyrann's Reach to the heart of Citadel V, and the deadly encounters with the Fallen had brought us here. The edge of a new beginning or the final collapse of everything humanity once believed in. Now, standing on the bridge of the Hell's Echo, I felt the weight of everything we'd sacrificed settle over me like a second skin. But beneath the weight was something else, a fierce, unyielding hope. The dawn of a new age was at hand. The final battle plan. Our target was Obsidian Reach, the Cabal's heavily fortified asteroid fortress and last stronghold. It was the source of their power, the wellspring of their influence and corruption. Taking it down meant crippling their entire network. Lyra's inside intel had revealed a weakness deep within the fortress, a power core that controlled the station's shields and weapon systems. "This is it," I said to the team, voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Destroy the core, and we break the Cabal's grip on the coalition." Marcus ran through the tactical schematics one last time. "We hit fast, hit hard, and get out. No room for mistakes." Tarek added, "Extraction point is tight. We'll have minutes to evacuate before the whole place collapses." Lyra's eyes met mine, no longer haunted, but fierce with determination. "We finish this." Infiltrating Obsidian Reach, we approached the asteroid under the cover of darkness and stealth tech. The fortress was a monstrous silhouette against the stars, jagged, industrial, a symbol of oppression. We deployed in stealth pods, slipping into service tunnels long forgotten by the Cabal's complacent guards. Inside, the station was a maze of corridors, surveillance drones, and lethal traps. The fight for the core. Our path took us through the fortress's bowels, the reactor rooms, armories, and command centers. Each step was met with resistance. Elite guards with enhanced armor and weapons trained for rapid, ruthless combat. I fought side by side with my crew, every bullet fired, every move calculated. Lyra's sacrifice. As we neared the power core, alarms screamed. The Cabal had detected our presence. We were outnumbered, outgunned. Lyra took a stand at the core's control panel. "I'm going to overload the system," she said. "No," I shouted. "We get out together." Her eyes were clear. "If we don't take this chance, the war is lost. This is the only way." She connected her neural interface, fingers flying over the controls as the system began to melt down. The final stand. The corridors filled with reinforcements. We fought desperately to hold them back, buying Lyra time. Marcus fell, taking down enemies with his last breath. Tarek's voice trembled over comms. "We can't hold much longer." I felt the crushing weight of loss and determination. The explosion. With a final surge, Lyra triggered the meltdown. A chain reaction rippled through the station. We barely escaped the blast radius as Obsidian Reach exploded in a cataclysmic fireball. Aftermath. The Cabal's power shattered. The coalition reeled but began to heal. Corrupt leaders were exposed and removed. A new coalition. In the weeks that followed, the coalition rebuilt, stronger, more united. I stood with my crew. Now more than soldiers, we were symbols of resilience and hope. Personal reflections. As I watched the sun rise over a reborn planet, I thought of all we'd lost and all we had gained. We were flawed, scarred, and broken, but we were human, and humanity always rises.